Hello everyone and welcome to Writhing's World and welcome to my guide for the Writhing One. The Writhing One is a new class in the newest expansion of Tales of Maj'Eyal, which will come out very soon. Now the developer was nice enough to give me a key to preview this game and to play it a little bit, and I have now finished the game with this Writhing One, and I thought I would make a guide in order to make you better understand this class for when the game comes out. So let's get started. So let us start with the resource that the Writhing One uses, and that's this here, Insanity. And Insanity, basically the higher it becomes, the more random our damage as well as cooldowns become. And that can mean that our damage can go up, but also down. So how does that work? Well, let's say here I attack someone, then you can see that we now suddenly have 9 Insanity. If I attack this one, we have even more, 19. I can also use some attacks that generate Insanity. We'll get to those later, but 2 of those here is Lash Out, that generates 5 Insanity or 15, and this one here that makes us get 20 Insanity. Now look at the cooldown. The cooldown of this one is 18. If I cast this, it's 17, even though normally it would be 18. Now we have way more. Now this one here's cooldown is 8. And now its cooldown is 7. Now this can go up or down, and it can go up or down way more than we see here now because we didn't have so much Insanity yet. I can see if I can find some more enemies to attack. So let's see if I can do it again with a cooldown of 8. Now we have a cooldown of 6. So as you can see, this just changes our cooldown either up or down in a certain amount of strength, or how do you call that, a certain amount of power, depending on how insane we are. Now that we have that out of the way, let's look at our skills. So these are the trees that you normally start with, and these ones you have to unlock if you want to. And let's start with Demented Tentacles here. Now the first thing is here, this one, Mutated Hand. It has a fairly steep magic cost, so at the beginning it's fairly hard to level because you won't have so much magic yet. But what it does is it changes our offhand into a tentacle, and whenever we hit an enemy, our offhand will automatically hit with a tentacle, and that does a certain amount of darkness damage. And this is, how do you call it, increase the scales with your magic, not with your strength. Now this tentacle does darkness damage, but it also has a decent crit chance, and it's really quite nice. And every time you hit someone, you gain 10 Insanity. Now I got 9 Insanity, but that's because my Insanity decreases every turn. So when you hit someone, you get 10, and then the next turn you only have 9 left because it decreases by 1. So that's what this does. You can actually also see that. It's quite hard to see now with all the bubbles around me and stuff, but here's my weapon, and here you can kind of see a tentacle. Now, what can we do with a tentacle? We can do a Lash Out, and Lash Out is this kind of whirlwind attack. That's this one here, that's now on cooldown. I just used it, and what it does is you hit everyone around you, and you do, at a radius 1, basically you do it with your normal weapon. You hit everyone for 226 weapon damage, percent weapon damage, but of course that scales with the amount of levels you have in it. But then also your tentacle hits everyone in a radius of 3. Now if you hit someone with your main attack, then you gain 15 Insanity. If you hit someone with your tentacle attack, you gain 5 Insanity. So this is a nice Insanity generator, and you need this Insanity to cast some other spells. Now let's give that one more look, if we can find an enemy somewhere. Alright, I found an enemy. So, as you can see here, I now have a 76 Insanity, which can either increase by 15, 5 or 20, depending on whether I hit only with my main hand or also with my tentacle attack. So let's see. And now we have a 95 Insanity, so it's really quite a nice Insanity generator. And it does a lot of damage as well. So let's go to the next attack, Tendrils Eruption. Basically this is a ranged AoE attack, and everyone caught inside gets a certain amount of tentacle damage, but also people that get hit, they have to save against spell, or they get their damage reduced, the amount of damage that they do. If I hit at least one enemy, I get 20 Insanity. Let's see if we can find an enemy. There are some over there, although my minion is already taking care of them, so let's find some other ones. Here we go. So here's one, and now we have 84 Insanity. So if we use this Tendril Eruption, it has quite a nice AoE. we can just cast it on him and he died, and we get some more insanity. This is really a quite nice attack. So then we have our last thing in tentacles, which is constrict. Now constrict is basically like a scorpion in Mortal Kombat attack. So you extend your tentacle, in this case, you grab someone, grab them towards yourself, and then every turn you try to pull them towards you. Now also, every turn it automatically does extra damage to that target. Like, we don't have to hit someone to do our tentacle attack, it does it automatically when we have constricted them. So let's first constrict someone and hope they don't immediately die. Alright, here is someone, a Quasit, and we try to constrict it. So now I pulled it towards me and now it is constricted. So as you can see in the purple there, tentacle constriction. Now every turn it will get some damage from me, but also my previous two spells have now been changed. So this one here, when constricting, your tentacle attack is centered around your constricted target, but not my weapon attack, and only in radius 1, but it also dazes anyone hit for 5 turns. So instead of doing a whirlwind around me, I do a whirlwind around the enemy in a radius 1, and it dazes everyone that's been hit for 5 turns. Now, this one also does something interesting when it's constricting. Instead of doing this huge AoE attack that I just showed, you basically put all those tentacles against the constricted target and you do a ton of damage, 490% tentacle damage in my case. And if I'm adjacent, I also make an additional main hand attack. So, and the cooldown is also reduced to 10, which is quite nice. So, let's do that one. It will die, but then you can see all tentacles sprouting from it, and then it dies. So this is quite a nice ability tree. Next up is our Demented Horrific Body. So first of all is a really nice skill, Shed Skin. Basically it's just a shield. So you put up your mutated skin and it acts as a damage shield for 7 turns, which can absorb a certain amount of damage. Now, that's in that sense not that interesting, but the next one here plays on that, and every time this shield loses a certain % of its max power, or we take damage over a certain percentage of our maximum life, a pustule grows on our body for 5 turns, and this amount of pustules that goes up according to the level of the skill, and each pustule increases our resistances by 6%. That's quite nice. And this also scales with our spell power, so the more we get hit, the more resistance we get. Now, we can do something more with that, which is here Pustulant Fulmination. You make all your putrescent pustules explode at once, splashing all creatures in radius 5 with black fluids that deal a certain amount of damage per pustule and heal us per pustule. So basically we explode all the pustules we've been building up by having the shield, getting hit, building up pustules which will then explode, do damage to people and healing ourselves. Now we can make that even better by this last one called Defiled Blood. When we make our pustules explode, we leave a pool of defiled blood on the ground for 5 turns. Foes caught inside get assaulted by black tentacles every turn, dealing 1% darkness tentacle damage and covering them in your black blood for 2 turns. Now, the damage is okay, I guess it doesn't do that much. However, the creatures that hit us while covered in our blood heal us for a certain percentage of the damage that they do. So basically we get a little bit more tanky when we explode this blood, because the people that are attacking us, they also heal us at the same time that they are doing damage to us. So let's see if we can illustrate this. So I found some enemies. I've cast my Shed Skin here, which is this round bubble around me, and now they've been hitting me a little bit. So now I have 1 pustule, which has 4 turns left. So if they keep attacking me, yeah, now I have 2 pustules and now they have 6 turns left again. So what I can do now is I can make those explode, except for somehow reason I cannot do it now, and that's because I don't have enough insanity. So let's make some insanity for us. Let's not kill everyone. Now we do. So now we've got enough insanity, we've got 3 pustules, and if I cast this, then everyone will get a little bit of damage, and we will get healed. Furthermore, whenever they attack us, they will also heal us a little bit because of this defiled blood. So let's do that. Now these here are full health, this one's almost dead, and I have a little bit of damage. So I got healed a bit. These all got a fair amount of damage, and that was only from a couple of pustules. I can have way more. I can have a maximum of, I think, 8 or 7. So I can have 8 at once at the moment because I have a fairly high level in this. So it's quite a nice tree that helps not only making us more tanky, but also can do some damage once you've gotten a lot of damage yourself and build up these pustules. Alright, on to the next abilities. We have Demented Path of Horror. This is a fairly passive tree, so first we start off here with Carrion Feet, which does two things. First of all, our feet start continuously producing carrion worms that are constantly crushed as we walk, passively increasing our movement speed by a certain percentage. As you can see here, I haven't leveled it much here, but I still get 20% extra movement speed. Furthermore, it also allows us to jump to a certain amount of distance, which increases by talent level. And when we land, we create a cone, and everyone inside deals 70% less damage for one turn. Furthermore, it's also a good insanity generator because, as you can see, it gains 20 insanity whenever we cast this and we affect at least one enemy. Now that's this ability here. We can basically just jump somewhere, like to this one here, and then we gain some insanity. And this one here, probably, if we hit it, yeah, Carrion Feet here in the dark purple. So now it deals 70% less damage to us. Now, what's the second ability? Your mutations have enhanced your offense even further. So by leveling this, we gain more accuracy as well as more spell power. That's all. Basically, it's just a passive ability that just increases your accuracy and spell power, but that scales with how much magic you have. So the more magic you have, the more accuracy and spell power extra you get. Now, then we have Overgrowth, which I quite like. You trigger a cascade of rapidly mutating cells in your body for 8 turns. Your body grows much bigger, gaining 2 size categories, making you able to walk through walls and increasing all your damage by 31%, in this case, depending on level of talent, and all our resistances also by a certain amount of percentage. So we increase our damage, but we also become more hard to kill. However, every time we walk, we rearrange nearby terrain, which is a little bit confusing. You'll see it in a little bit. Let's first go to the next one though, which is also a very easy passive talent. Basically, we gain a certain percentage of stun immunity, which is really great because stun is so dangerous in this game. It also allows us to ignore critical strikes, and our darkness and blight damage are increased by a certain percentage. For example, here our tentacle does darkness damage, so we increase that damage by using this Writhing 1 passive skill. Alright, let's go back to this Overgrowth here. It cost us 20 insanity, so it's not a very cheap one, but currently I have 38, so I can cast it. And now we just gain 2 size categories, we get less damage, we do more damage, so I can just bump this one and kill it. But also, probably it happens also in this level, if I walk, you will see these walls here, you will see them changing. See? Because I create so much tremors with my feet by walking around, I actually change the terrain around me. Now this is something in general I don't want to happen, so normally I stay still when I use Overgrowth. So basically I pop Overgrowth and then I start casting these high damaging attacks that will be increased in damage by having Overgrowth activated. Alright, then we go to our Controlled Horrors tree. Now this is our summoning tree. So first we have Decayed Devourers. You use your bond with horrors to summon 3 decaying devourers for a certain amount of turns. They cannot move and will attack all hostile creatures around them. They possess the talents Bloodbath, Gnashing Teeth and Frenzied Bite. All its primary stats will be set to a certain amount, which increases based on how much magic we have. Their life and talent levels are also set to a certain level, and many other stats will scale with level as well. So all of this stuff is not that important. The most important thing to know is that we can actually summon stuff. So what we can do is basically, let's see if we can find some enemies. Here's one. If I cast this, I have this AoE here, and I basically put these decaying devourers right there. They cannot move, but everyone that is close to them will be attacked by them by quite good damage, I would say, and I actually haven't even really leveled this talent so much. So what's up next? Next is the Decayed Bloated Horror. Now that's basically summoning another type of creature for a certain amount of turns. It can also not move. It has basically exactly the same stuff as this one, except we only summon one, and it has different abilities. It has Mind Disruption, Mind Seer. So basically, if we summon that, we don't have enough insanity for that currently, so let's find some enemies, like this one here. Now we can summon it. It's this bloated horror here. So basically this one has fairly good talents, as you can see here. Inspect creatures, we can go to talents. It has this Mind Seer here, which does a lot of mind damage. It's basically kind of a ranged attacker. And we have this Agony here, which also has a range of 7. So basically, normally I use the Decaying Devourers in order to basically block a path for some people, and I would use this one if I need a single high damage thing that can also attack at range. Now, then we have this Horrific Display, which I actually have not used at all. Basically, it tries to turn an enemy against the enemies, or the other way around, it turns the enemies against your target. So we target someone and turn them into a horror for a certain amount of turns, and all the other creatures become hostile to it. So I haven't really used this because I haven't really found a situation where I would find this better than, for example, direct damage. But I'm sure that in certain situations it would probably be good, but I can't really tell you much about it because I just haven't really used it much. We could try to use it somewhere. Let's see. Here we go, that's better. There, now we can maybe turn this one into a horror. Or this one. But it's already a horror, so it doesn't work against those. Does not work on horrors, as you can see in the bottom. There. And now it turned into a horror, and then it immediately got killed by the enemies. So that's great, but I think there's better abilities around. So let's then go to the last one. The Call of Amacthel. You attune your horrors to the dead god Amacthel, increasing your summoned horror damage by 34% in my case. At talent level 3, your Decaying Devourer spell will summon 4 additional Devourers adjacent to random enemies nearby. So basically, instead of getting our standard 3 Devourers, we get way more. We get 4 additional ones that are summoned kind of randomly. Also, our Bloated Horror will learn the Agony talent, which I already showed you. And at level 5, the victims of the Horrific Display will pull enemies in radius 10, one space towards them each turn. So if we manage to transform someone into a horror, then they will attract the enemy and they kind of become a decoy. And that's really quite nice. But the reason I haven't really experimented with that is this ability, and I'll come to that later. Then we come to the talent tree that I completely skipped. Let's first go over the skills and then I'll tell you why I skipped it. So it's Disfigured Face. First of all, we turn our tongue into a tentacle and we can lick enemies in a cone. They take 100% tentacle damage, which is quite nice, which actually ignores armor, and they get sick, gaining a random disease for 5 turns that deals a certain amount of blight damage per turn, and it reduces their strength, dexterity or constitution by 14. So it's kind of a very nice debuff. Also, it gains sanity or insanity for us when we hit an enemy, and the disease damage will increase with our spell power. Now, then we have Dissolved Face. We approach our face to our target and let some of it melt in a gush of blood and gore, dealing darkness damage in a cone over 5 turns. Each turn, the target will be dealt an additional blight damage per disease that they have. So if you stack up some diseases, then they'll get a lot of damage every turn. Next up, Writhing Hairs. For a brief moment, horrific hairs grow on your head, each of them ending with a creepy eye. You use those eyes to gaze upon a target area, and creatures caught inside partially turn to stone, reducing their movement speed by 32% and making them brittle for 7 turns. Brittle targets have a 35% chance for any damage they take to be increased by 33%. So this is quite a nice debuff. If this works, then basically they are way less resistant to damage from us, and it cannot be saved again, so it's really quite nice. So here then we have Glimpse of True Horror. Whenever you use a Disfigured Face power, which is all of these, then you show what a glimpse of what a true horror is. If the affected targets fail a spell save, they become frightened for 2 turns, giving them 17% chances to fail using talents. When a target becomes afraid, it bolsters you to see their anguish, increasing your darkness and blight damage penetration by 24% for 2 turns. And this will increase with spell power. Now, the reason I haven't really used this is all of them are fairly situational, and I never felt the need that I needed them. So I rather wanted to put my talents into other trees than this one, even though it has fairly nice debuffs and stuff. But instead of debuffing the enemy, I found that I was already doing enough damage so that I actually didn't really need to debuff them. Like whenever I opened a chest and it spawned an army or something, you will see that in some clips I can show that I kill those things basically in 2 or 3 turns by using this Tendrils Eruption and Lash Out. So I never needed to make them brittle. So I found this, in my case at least, to be a little bit of a waste of talent points. Alright, let's go to Demented, Friends of the Worm. Now, this is a tree I absolutely love. It takes a while to unlock it, but once you have it, you can invoke a long-standing pact with a fellow horror, a worm that walks, to help you in your travels. You can fully control it, level it, and equip it. Using this spell will resurrect your friendly horror if it died, giving it back 86% life. In this case, it starts lower. Higher raw talent levels will give your horror more equipment slots. So it starts off with just a main hand and an offhand. Then at level 2 you can equip it with armor, at level 3 you can give it a belt, at level 4 you can give it 2 rings, at level 5 you can give it 2 extra rings for a total of 4, as well as a trinket. So how does that work? As you can see here, we have our worm that walks, and he's also probably somewhere to be found close to us. There he is, this guy here, the worm that walks. So let's first kill these guys. Alright, now I can quietly show you how this works. So I can go here to the worm that walks, I can click on him, and you can see these are the talents that he will be using on his own, but I can actually also control this worm that walks, but I cannot go out of range too much, otherwise the spell will break. So what can we do though? If I press on I, like my inventory, you can see that I've actually been equipping it with 2 weapons, because it is dual wielding, and armor, and those 4 rings that we talked about, as well as a belt and a how do you call that, a charm or accessory. So you can completely equip him. But also what you can do is you can go press P and then you can level him up. Now I must say, this worm that walks, I haven't built him in any specific way. I also won't go over his abilities very much, but a lot of it has to do with diseases. So here you will fire a bolt that will apply a disease. You will also just be attacking people more efficiently and then spreading diseases to other targets, and that disease will do damage to others, and so on. So he's very much a close combat person with his dual wielding that can do a lot of damage, but then he will also be spreading diseases around. And as you saw before, some of our talent trees also happen to synergize with that by doing stuff with diseases. Now, I won't really go into detail with this one because personally I haven't found the perfect way to synergize this one with my abilities, potentially because I haven't focused on the diseases as much as I have at pure damage. Anyway, that's what the worm that walks does. Now, that's not all he does though, because we can upgrade him. And this is one of my favorite abilities, maybe in the game even. You and your worm that walks both teleport to an enemy in range 10 and make a melee attack. Your worm that walks blindside talent cooldown is reduced by 3. So this has 2 parts on it. First of all, we can teleport to an enemy. So let us find an enemy, like this one here. We can just teleport, and it has quite a good range actually, except now because there's so much things that do our line of sight away, I can't really show it, but you can teleport really far. Then if we teleport to this one, we both teleport there and do a melee attack against him. So this is a really good gap closer. It's really nice. It does a lot of damage, actually even uniques and stuff. Sometimes I one-shot them, not always, but at least you do a fairly good amount of damage on them. And also your Worm That Walks teleports there. Now, it also reduced Blindside's cooldown. As you can see here, it says Blindside talent cooldown is reduced. Now, what is that? When we click on our Worm That Walks, it has this ability here, Blindside. And it starts off with that. Basically, sometimes you will see my Worm of this guy teleporting away. So let's see if we find someone. Now he will probably teleport there. No, now he chose to go with his other talents first. He's using his other talents, so I guess I'll just have to use him. So we can blindside someone and teleport to them. And then he will be attacking them. He also does this on his own, except now I couldn't really show it. But basically it means he teleports somewhere and he gains extra defense and also starts killing stuff on his own. And he does a fair amount of damage because you can equip him with nice weapons and so on. So your summon gets better. Now, we also have this one here, Shared Insanity. You establish a powerful mental link with your Worm That Walks. As long as you remain within radius 3 of your Worm That Walks, each of you gains 22% all resistance for 3 turns. Additionally, your Worm That Walks permanently gains an inscription slot every 2 raw talent levels. So as you can see here, I gave it a shield, and it actually also uses it. Whenever it gets low on health, it will start shielding itself, and it's really quite nice. So you can just give him inscriptions like regeneration or shielding or even heat beam or whatever you want to, and he will use it. As you can see here now, we actually used the shielding talent this turn. So we actually upgraded him, but also we gain that all resistance, and you can see that with this icon here, Shared Insanity, linked to their horror ally, gaining 19% all damage resistance. If we get out of range, then this cooldown will start. Now it's 5, 4, because we're not close to him anymore, but if we go back to him, then it just resets to 6. So as long as we stay close to our Worm That Walks, we will get a lot of extra resistances. Now, then we have Terrible Sight. While within range 3 of our Worm That Walks, we can project an aura of terror. At the sight of 2 maddening horrors fighting together, all your foes in radius, in this case 4, must make a physical save against our spell power or be stunned for a certain amount of turns. Additionally, our Shared Insanity, the one we just checked, will cause enemies in radius 3 to lose spell save and defense for 3 turns. So as long as we are together, let's start with the second part first. Our enemies will get weaker, they will lose spell save and they will lose defense, so they're easier to hit. And if we use this ability, then everyone in range might get stunned. And that's really nice because then they can't really use their spells so often. So it's this ability here. It costs 10 insanity, and in general I found I didn't really need it very often. So if I click on this, then this one here is stunned for 6 turns and this one here is not. So it worked only on this one. But let's say you are in one of the prides where there's all these mages casting spells on you, then it's really quite a nice talent to have. I didn't put many points in it, but at least it's a very situational talent in order to make sure that they can't use their spells as much. Then there is the last tree, Demented Slow Death, and as you can see I didn't put any points in this whatsoever. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad tree, let's go over it anyway. So we have Digest. You make a melee attack dealing 151% weapon damage at level 1, which is quite nice, and then you attempt to snatch a foe that has 10% life or less left and swallow it whole. While you digest it, you gain 1 insanity per turn and you will only die at minus 72 life. The digestion lasts for 50 turns for an elite and 25 turns for others. So, you basically take someone in your belly, you will be digesting them slowly, you die less quickly at minus 72 life in this case, but also every turn that you're digesting them, you get a little bit of insanity. So while you're exploring, you kind of have a better way of keeping up your insanity, or it doesn't decrease, because normally you lose an insanity per turn, but now you don't because you're walking around with this person that gives you 1 insanity per turn. Now, this is quite okay. Then we have the next one here, painful agony. The pain you inflict to the victim you are digesting is so intense something breaks inside it, giving you a way into its mind. When you digest, you can steal a random talent from your victim and can use it for yourself at talent level 1. At talent level 5, you can choose which talent to use. You may not steal a talent which you already know. The stolen talent will not use any resource to activate. Now, I must say I have not used this at all. When I made my previous Writhing ones, I've had this talent, which is quite fun. If you eat someone, you'll see this text popping up from your belly like, I can feel my body dissolving around me and let me out. It's kind of funny. But this here, you can steal their talents and use them for yourself. The reason I did not go for this tree is it's too much upkeep. Basically, I can kill everyone in a couple of turns. Why would I want to check which enemy is at 10% or less life left in order to swallow it so that I can get some digestion? Then I have to choose a talent to use, which might be super powerful. I'm not entirely sure. There's probably really good talents around. And it might actually be a really good spell tree if you play on the higher difficulties. I currently play on normal difficulty and roguelike, so you can only die once. But if you maybe go for madness or insanity or insane, I think it's called, then this might be really good because you generally have a slower pace of playing, and then digesting these enemies and stealing their talents while getting some insanity every turn is probably really good. But for my normal runs, this does not really seem to be worth the hassle. Then we go to the next one here, inner tentacles. Your stomach grows small tentacles inside, which probe and torment your digested victims even more. Whenever you deal a critical strike, the tentacles probe harder, feeding you more energy from the pain of your victim, making you able to feel on the pain you caused the others for 3 turns. Making you able to feed on the pain you caused to others for 3 turns. These effects give you 20% chances to leech off your attacks, healing you for 16% of the damage done. So it's a passive, so whenever you're digesting someone, you actually gain lifesteal. That makes you very tanky, which is really quite cool, but of course you need to then remember to actually ingest someone. Then we go to consume whole. Instantly consume what remains of your victim, healing yourself and generating insanity. So all in all, again, I'll just reiterate, it's a nice tree. It makes you more tanky. It gives you actually some additional healing, as well as some additional talents, as well as some additional insanity. So overall, it's really quite a good tree. I just found it not worth the hassle currently because I was not having too much of a problem while having the other direct damage abilities activated. So that's basically it for the Writhing One's class talents. Then let's go to this one here, the generic talent, Demented beyond sanity. First of all, we have this sustain thing that we harness the chaos created by high insanity. Each time we trigger an insanity chaotic effect with a power higher than 8 or lower than -8, so if it increases our damage, for example, by more than 8 or less than 8, decreases our damage by 8, then we gain a chaos orb for 10 turns. This effect can only happen once per turn. Each orb increases your damage by 3% and can stack up to 7. As you can see here, I currently have 7 stacks, and that means I get plus 35% to all damage dealt, which is really nice. So I also leveled this, because first of all, it gets us more stacks, but second of all, when you level this limit of higher than 8, lower than 8 gets decreased. So at first it starts, for example, higher than 20 or lower than -20, but over the levels it kind of reduces the amount of randomness you need in order to actually gain one of these chaos orbs. And then we gain a lot of stacks in order to increase our damage dealt, which is really nice. Then we have Anarchic Walk, which means we consume 2 of our chaos orbs in order to teleport somewhere. So as you can see here, if I activate it, we can teleport somewhere, but the problem is it's not a control teleport. As you can see here, randomly teleports you in a general direction up to 8 tiles away. You will always travel at least a certain amount of tiles away if possible, depending on the skill level. So if I now cast this, we will end up somewhere in this square. Now we actually teleported really far. However, if we would have leveled this, the minimum amount that we teleport is increased. Then we have Disjointed Mind. Haven't used this at all in the entire game. You trigger an explosion of your Chaos Orbs on a target. The orbs do no damage but confuse it for a certain amount of turns with a confusion power of 10% per orb. Your effective spell power used to overcome the target's mental save is also increased by 10% per orb. All your orbs are always spent. So you spend all your orbs in order to confuse a target. I haven't used it. Probably very good at higher difficulty levels again if you really need to do that to a very certain strong boss or unique. But in this difficulty level I haven't found it necessary. Then we have Controlled Chaos. You lean to alter chaotic forces to your advantage. Your maximum negative insanity effect is reduced from 50% to 26%. You may activate this talent to consume any chaos orb you have, gaining 10 insanity per orb. Alright, so this consists of two parts. First of all, as I said before, our insanity increases or decreases our damage, and it increases or decreases our cooldowns. However, when we level this, the decrease to damage and the increase to cooldowns, because you don't want longer cooldowns of course, is actually less likely to happen, or it's less severe. So our damage generally goes up, or it might go down to minus 26%. But if you don't level this, it might go down to 50% less damage or 50% more cooldown. But now we only get minus 26% damage or plus 26% cooldown. So this basically reduces the randomness in such a way that most of the time it's positive for yourself. Then there's the second thing. You may activate this talent to consume any chaos orbs you have, gaining 10 insanity per orb. So if you have some orbs left but you don't have enough insanity to cast your spells, you can just consume all your orbs in order to gain insanity per orb. This is actually quite strong, but I always forget to use it. So yeah, there's that. Now, let's go to the last part of this guide. Why did I choose the race of Drem? The Drem is a new race that you have to unlock in order to play it, and it is quite a strong race, it seems. We can look here at the talents it has. First of all, it's Frenzy. Enter a killing frenzy for 3 turns. During the frenzy, the first time you use a class talent, it has no cooldown, but it does if it's used twice. This does not work for inscriptions, talents that make no turn to use or have fixed cooldowns. So now, let's cast this one here. Tendrils Eruption. Does a lot of damage. If we would have activated Frenzy first, then we could have cast that twice and do twice lots of damage. I can actually show that here. Lash Out normally gets on a cooldown. Actually, you can see also this normally has a cooldown of 18, but now it has 14 because of my high insanity. So if we now click on Frenzy and we do this one, and then we can use it again. And we can summon. And we can summon again. So this is really strong. You can use your strong abilities, of which we don't have that many. I really rely in this game mostly on these 2 talents as well as the summon. So being able to use those without cooldowns for kind of an alpha strike where you just kill everyone is really strong. Then we have this one here, Spike Skin. Your skin grows small spikes coated in dark blight. When you are hit in melee, the attacker starts bleeding black blood for 5 turns that deals a certain amount of darkness damage each turn. This effect may only happen once per turn. You're empowered by the sight of the black blood. For each bleeding creature in radius 2, you gain 5% all resistances. So everyone that attacks us starts bleeding for a little bit of damage. That's not the reason I chose this talent. The reason I chose it is that for each bleeding creature in our radius, we gain 5% all resistance. Now, we already gained all resistance by being together with our worm that walks. We already gain all resistance by using overgrowth, and then we gain even more all resistance. So we are really resistant to stuff, to basically everything, which is really great. Then we have this one, probably quite good. Our faceless visage is puzzling and emotionless, allowing us to more easily resist mind tricks, so we gain more mental save, but also we gain confusion immunity. Why didn't I level this more? Well, that's because if we go to our defenses, we can see that I already had 100% confusion immunity because of my equipment and stuff like that I didn't feel the need to really increase it. Also, my mental save was already really high, so I did not level this talent in this situation because I already had these things. But you might want to look, depending on which equipment you have and so on, whether you think this is worth leveling or not. Then we have this one here, and this is a amazing spell. It's really good, maybe even overpowered. Our affinity with things that dwell deep beneath the surface allow us to summon a hungering mouth. The mouth has a certain amount of bonus life, lasts for 9 turns and deals no damage. Each turn the mouth will draw all creatures in radius 10, 3 spaces towards itself, and force them to target it. And its bonus life depends on our constitution stat and talent level. So basically, when we come across enemies, let's see if we can... Oh, now he actually did teleport the worm that walks by himself. But let's see if we can find some enemies here. It probably dies because this one will probably attack it. But we can just summon this thing here and say like, you have to attack this thing and not us. So this is extremely strong if you open a vault with a lot of enemies that will want you dead. You just summon this in between and they'll be busy for a couple of turns attacking that, attacking the hungering mouth. Let's say you're on low health and you need to have a couple of turns for your regeneration to come off cooldowns. You just summon this and your enemies are busy attacking your hungering mouth. It's such a versatile and great spell. I think it's overpowered, but it's at least really, really great. And that's also why I went for the Drem for this Writhing one, because first of all, the Frenzy is just so great. We don't have so many talents that do a lot of damage, and I rely very much on these, so I can cast them multiple times. And then whenever things get a bit sticky, I can just cast this Hungering Mouth, and then the enemies will not bother me for a while. So, all in all, Drem seems to be a really great race overall, but also very good for this Writhing one character. Also, as you can see here, the stats of the Drem fit with the Writhing one quite nicely. It gets more strength as well as more magic, and these are both the main stats for the Writhing one. So strength you need because you'll be a lot in close combat and you use all weapons and armor, and magic you need because most of your skills actually scale with spell power. So it's a very interesting mix of mage and fighter. Regarding stats, so we necessarily need strength and magic, and that's also what I mostly leveled first. I put a little bit of a focus more on magic than strength, especially because some of my talents needed magic to unlock and needed a lot of magic to unlock, especially this mutated hand here needed a fairly high magic stat in order to level it up at the beginning of the game. However, at some point I started feeling fairly squishy, and then I started dividing them a little bit between strength, magic and constitution, especially also to unlock here this thick skin, which increased my resistance to all damage by a certain percentage. And that's definitely what I felt with the couple of Writhing one characters that I made, is that the beginning I felt a bit squishy. And at that point you don't really have all these resistances yet, you don't have your ally yet. So at that point I needed to rely on, well, let's say my health more. I got hit in combat more, I wasn't resisting as much, I couldn't summon as much, I didn't do as much damage yet. So at that point I really wanted to have this thick skin. So I kind of started pumping some points into my constitution and then here into my thick skin. Now, once these were all at level 60, which happened very late in the game, then basically I started pumping them into cunning, and I'm not sure if that's the best thing, but the reason I did it was I didn't feel squishy anymore. I had enough inscriptions, I had all of this healing, I had my shields, and I could block the way with my summons, for example, whenever I didn't want someone to come close to me. Then I started putting it into cunning because that would increase my crit chance, which I really wanted to have. So regarding skill build up, how did I do that? Well, I started off very quickly by leveling Shed's skin a little bit. I think I leveled it to level 3 and it was there for basically most of the game until I started having a surplus of talent levels. But at the beginning that Shed skin really saved my life multiple times, so I wanted to level it at least a little bit at the beginning of the game. I also had this mutated hand, Lash Out and Tendril Eruption, but I left them left these two at level 1 for a long time because I didn't feel like I really needed the damage. They already did a fair amount of damage and I had some other skills that I wanted to put the points in. So basically this one I leveled it every time I could, and then I left these at level 1 for a long time while I was leveling other things, and then at some point I had enough points and I started leveling these up. And also I used a category point in order to increase this one's efficiency here to 1.5 instead of to 1.3 in order to further increase the damage that I had. Because I didn't want to unlock this Demented Slow Death, I didn't want to unlock any other things here. These are actually not standard with this class. I unlocked them by finishing some quests and stuff. Also this one here I unlocked, and this one actually I'm not sure about anymore. But basically I didn't really want to unlock anything else, so I used my category point in order to increase the efficiency of this one. Now, the shield I leveled. This one I left quite low for a long time because these resistances, these percentage resistances don't do so much in the beginning of the game yet, so I started leveling this up later. Then once I had enough pustules, I started leveling this one quite well, that I could make them explode and do damage with them. But I definitely put this on one skill quite early on already, so that if I really needed a small heal and I had some pustules, then I could explode it. It's very situational, and I think I've used it like 5 times in the entire game, but you don't want to be caught somewhere where you just need a little bit more health to survive an encounter and you didn't take this skill. So that's why I took it. This one here I left quite low because all it really does is it heals us a bit more, but as I said, I didn't feel squishy at some point anymore, so I didn't level it very much. Then we have this one here, the Carrion Feet. I left it quite low because increasing passive movement speed is probably quite good, but we have a lot of mobility anyway. We can teleport this one, we can teleport with the worm that walks, we can actually grab people with our Constrict. So if we need a mage to be close to us, we can either jump towards them, or we can pull them towards ourselves, or we can distract them, in this case with my Drem special ability. So I never really needed much movement speed extra, I felt, so that's why I didn't level it more. This one here I kind of leveled more later in the game because, well, getting a bit more accuracy and spell power didn't seem to be worth it over some other things that I wanted to put points in. But later on, once I had a lot of magic, this bonus really started to add up because the effect increases with my magic stat, and then I started putting more points into it. This Overgrowth I took basically immediately, and once I started getting into some more difficult encounters, I would pop this, then I would pop my Frenzy, and then I would start going to town with my Tendrils and my Lash Out, and then basically I would kill everyone in one go. Then the Writhing one, well, it's a passive tree that gives us stun immunity. What's more to say, stun can really mess up your game, so getting more stun immunity is very important, and that's why I took it. I didn't really care so much about the Blight and Darkness increase. I would have probably taken this just for the stun immunity. So then here, I leveled this to 3. I didn't need to level it more because I felt they were fulfilling their purpose already. So the only thing that it does is increase the amount of turns. I definitely put some more points into it because I wanted more turns, and I think it starts at 3 or 4 turns, which I didn't think was enough, but 7 turns was definitely plenty. Also, they seem to do enough damage, and their main thing for me was to be a distraction. I wanted the enemy to have more things to target than myself. So I would cast these and then they would be attacking someone, but their main purpose was to not to kill things, but to just distract the enemy, and that's what I used them for. Also sometimes to block the way. Let's say there's many enemies around and there's in a hallway there's some big fighter coming towards you, then you could just cast these in front of that fighter and then the fighter can't come close to you. So very nice talent. This one here I leveled a little bit just to do a bit of range damage, but I rarely use this talent because I as I said before, I was killing everyone already with these two abilities, so I didn't really feel the need to level this one. Then here, this one I leveled to 3 in order to get more Devourers. As you can see, at level 3 we summon 4 additional Devourers, which is great, we just get more distraction. This one I leveled as quickly as possible. Getting this worm that walks up with as much as equipment as I could really helped, and he really goes to town. Like, he teleports to stuff, and sometimes I don't know where he is and I come back and there's a lot of loot lying there, so he's just killing stuff. He also tends to die a fair amount, but he's automatically recasted, and yeah, it's not really a problem when he dies. So then we have this one here, Foul Convergence. I wasn't sure whether I needed to level this or not, but I liked the ability so much that I did. Basically, yeah, you teleport to someone and you smack them in the face, both of you, your worm that walks and yourself, but like leveling this for a little bit less cooldown and a little bit more damage did not necessarily seem to be worth it that much. Then we have this one. This one I really like, although I didn't level it so much. So by being close to our worm that walks, we got more resistances, but putting more levels into this for a couple of more percentages of resistances just didn't seem worth it, so I only put 2 points in it. Then we have this one here, the Terrible Sight. Basically, I took this for situational use, but I actively used the talent maybe 3 times in the entire game. I used it on the final boss once, and then somewhere in one of the prides I think I used it, but I didn't really care for it that much. So my favorite talents of this whole Writhing one is definitely, well, the Tentacle Arm, of course, the Whirlwind attack, the AoE damage attack that reduces the damage of the enemies, and then this whole Pestilence stuff where you make your shed skin, then growing, doing more damage, getting less damage, as well as summoning some stuff, and then your friendly worm. So that's my build. So I completely forwent this Disfigured phase as well as the slow death and focused on these other trees. But if you have another build once the game is out and you think Demented, Figured phase or slow death is really great and you found some really great uses for it, please let me know, because I would be very happy to play another one of these and trying different talent trees. Regarding Prodigies, there's a couple of very nice ones, but the one I found just really good, like unskippable, was Arcane Might. You have learned to harness your latent arcane powers, channeling them through your weapon. This has the following effects. Equipped weapons are treated as having an additional 50% magic modifier. Your raw physical power is increased by 100% of your raw spell power. Your physical critical chance is increased by 25% of your bonus spell critical chance. Now this is just made for us, right? We use strength, we use melee weapons, and we level our magic a lot because most of our stuff is based on spell power. So the more magic we have, the more our physical power is increased, and our weapons start scaling with our magic modifier. That's just really, really good. I saw my damage basically double when I chose this Prodigy. So also, our physical critical chance is increased by 25% of your bonus spell critical chance. Quite good, but I haven't... Well, sometimes it made my decision of which equipment to take a bit easier, because one piece of equipment had some additional bonus spell critical chance. But let's say it has 4% spell critical chance, then our physical critical chance would just be 1% extra. So it's not that great, but it's still a nice bonus to have. Then afterwards, I basically saw 2 options, and I currently went for this one here, Corrupted Shell. Thanks to your newfound knowledge of corruption, you've learned some tricks for toughening your body, but only if you're healthy enough to withstand the strain from the changes. It improved my life by 250, my defense by 35, my armor by 30, armor hardiness by 20%, and my saves by 35. So yeah, just really defensive. And I thought that was great because I was killing everything in one go. So I didn't really need more offensiveness. And then I thought, well, it's gonna get more difficult as time goes on, so I might as well get more defensive, get more health. And the reason, kind of the thing that really made the decision easy for me is I rescued a Sun Paladin, which I always hope I can do, and unlocked Celestial Chance, which is one of my favorites, which basically then I use Chant of Fortitude, which increases my mental save by 59, but also increases my maximum life by 21%. So I immediately leveled this completely, and it just increases my life, which is great. So then when you go to that Prodigy, it increases your life by a certain percentage, so or by 250. So this Chant of Fortitude then increases your life by a certain percentage of that again. So I thought that was quite a nice synergy right there. Now, what was the other thing I really wanted to do? I really feel ashamed, or kind of, it is a bit of a shame that I didn't get to do it. But first of all, we have this one here. I can carry the world, getting strength increased by 50 and gaining a size category. So remember, this here is one size category, and then this one here gives us 2 extra size categories. Then there are some belts that give us more size categories. So they are, I think I saved one of them. This one here, size category +2. So now we already have 5 extra size categories, right? So if I then would also take this one here, you deal a massive blow to your foe, smashing it for 350% weapon damage and knocking it back 6 tiles. All foes in its path will be knocked to the side and stunned for 3 turns. For each category over big, you gain an additional 80% weapon damage. So we would gain 5 size categories, which one of them is kind of taken up by big already. So then we would get 4 extra, is 4 times 80, is 360% extra. So we would do 710% weapon damage and stunning the enemy at a cooldown of 10. That's absolutely ridiculous. Now, the reason I didn't go for this combination is because I really wanted to have Arcane Might. But in this game, let's see if I can find it still, because I have so much equipment. I did save it. Yeah, this one here. When first worn, the ring attunes to you, letting you choose a prodigy it will forever grant while worn, so you can get a 3rd prodigy. However, it reduces your physical save, your spell save and your mental save by 30, which I thought was a little bit risky. Also, then it would not allow me to wear any other ring. But basically, I would have Arcane Might, I would have this a lot of size categories, and I could do just this one hit that does 710% damage, would probably basically kill any enemy at once. The reason I didn't go for it was because it would make me less tanky instead of taking that prodigy that made me more tanky, and I decided to go for the safe way. Although I really would have liked to try this, because this Writhing ring seems just really fun together with those prodigies. So what will follow now is 2 examples of combat with this class. So you don't have to watch it if you don't want, but basically it's just to give you an idea on how I would approach different situations. And the 2 situations are, first of all, the final boss battle of the game, which I actually recorded before making this guide, because I wanted to make sure the character is actually viable, like I could finish the game with it. And the second situation will be the 4 Armory Vault, which is generally considered to be one of the most difficult rooms in the game. So this is actually something I'm recording before I made the guide, because I want to know whether it is possible to kill the boss with it. So now I am just before the boss here. As you can see here now, I'm Writhing here, a male Drem Writhing one, and I've been playing this character for 14.5 hours, and now it's finally time to try and kill the boss. So let's see how well it goes. Alright, so first I'll try to kill Ilander, because he's the Archmage and, well, he seems to be the most dangerous of the 2. I luckily still have some chaos left, so I can immediately grapple him, which I will do. And now, of course, they made everything dark. What I can do is I can use this one here in order to get rid of this negative effect. So I'll do that, and then I'll immediately start wailing on him. So first of all, I'll make sure to activate Frenzy so that my spells can be cast twice. Unfortunately, I don't have enough chaos for overgrowth so that I would do more damage. But now, because I'm constricting him, I am doing 490% tentacle damage twice in a row. And now this one. And now summoning stuff. So I'll summon some dudes here. as well as... Oh no, now this one is on cooldown, of course. So it is time to start regenerating a little bit, I think. Or maybe just a shield would be enough. Maybe I'll let myself get a little bit more damage first. So what I'll do is I'll make a Ice Storm. And now we've got him on 60% already. So I'll summon one of these bloated horrors. And maybe this from below it devours. I could put that here to basically make sure they attack this. Because it's a very nice spell to have. So now where is Elander? It's Argonial. It's hard to see anything here, unless he became invisible. Which is of course very possible. I'll just activate my regeneration. Well, in the meantime, what we could do is just teleport here and do a lash out. That should kind of clear out a lot of stuff. There he is. So in order to go there, now I of course just use my teleport. I summon my worm, and then I can do the fall convergence right on him. Of course, now I lost him again, but there he is. One closer. Now I'll activate my overgrowth. So now I'll have more resistances, but also more damage. And I'll just smack him. In 3 seconds I'll know, or in 3 turns I'll know where he is, because then I'm still grappling him. So then this one will be targeted on him. But in the meantime I'll summon some horrors. And now it's dark again. Maybe I can do Terrible Sight here in order to stun my enemies. And now I'll just have to wait. So maybe I'll activate my shield and walk around a little bit in the hope that I hit something. No, I'm not constricting anyone anymore. Where has he gone? In the meantime, I think I'll just help with Argonial. There he is. So let us do the fall convergence. 2%. And now he's gone again. In the meantime, because he's so low, I think I'll grapple this one here in order to save, hopefully, High Sun Paladin Aaron. So now he'll be focusing on me a little bit and I can cast a couple of spells. Such as summoning. And there he is. Summoning even more. Summoning with some of these. And I think I'll start regenerating. I think of going here in order to attack him with his minus 23 health and shield myself. He's at 13 again. Explode my pustules in order to kind of be a little bit more protected. I'll summon my writhing worm, or the worm that walks. Now I don't have any teleports anymore. In the meantime, I can just activate a shield with reflect. There we go. That's number 1. Trying to do it without closing any of the portals. This does a lot of damage, but I'll keep it in case Argonial teleports or something like that. I could do this one here, just to do a little bit more damage and have some more defenses. I think I'll activate my shield. I don't necessarily want to activate the regeneration yet. Oh, I should have activated my frenzy in order to do these things twice. There we go. Fought the 2 sorcerers without closing any invocation portals. Alright, now that I've beaten the game, it's time to try out the War Armory Vault, which is kind of one of the most difficult areas in the game, just to see how we would fare there, and also to show you how I would approach these kind of situations. So currently everything is off cooldown, we've got our worm that walks, and level 50 I just beat the game, and let's try. So first open this door here. Everything on cooldown again. Alright. Caught the attention of overpowered multi-hued worms in War Armory. Perhaps fleeing is in order. Alright, so how will we start this? I think the best thing to do is just the standard opening. Unfortunately, we don't have any sanity or insanity to start doing more damage with the overgrowth. So we'll just have to do the frenzy and do a lot of damage to these in the hope to already kill that mage, for example. I don't think we can include those dragons in here, unfortunately. So we'll do that. We'll do it again. Now include that one there, the orc soldier. Then it is time to summon. And now I think what I'll do is summon this from below it devours. Now it's definitely time for shield, as well as some regeneration. So now what we could do is to jump in, which I think I will do. So now my worm that walks is not dead yet, so I'll jump in there. And I don't think that worked. So I'll use my relentless pursuit in order to get rid of most of these things. And that did indeed not work. So I'll summon another shield. And maybe I can... I think I'll summon first. Or potentially I could grapple one. I think I'll grapple one. And summon. So now I don't have enough insanity anymore. So the question is, do I want to get in there or not? And I think I could do it. We should take some risks, of course. Like this. Oh, now they bummed me away, which is a bit annoying, because I wanted to do the tentacle attack here, which would have been great. I'll use the overgrowth. Then we get less damage. And then I'll actually just walk closer to them. 1, 2, 3. And now I'll use this tentacle attack here. That's already a couple of dragons less. I'll wait with popping my shield for now. I'm thinking of either using Ice Storm or summoning one of those bloated horrors. Probably bloated horror is the way to go. Or I could explode, or I could just see, See, and this is the problem with long fights. Then I don't really have any abilities to use anymore. And in that case, it might have been worth it to go for Disfigured face in order to have a couple of more attacks. But in general, I didn't have long fights in this game. So I think now I'll just use Ice Storm. And now we are blinded. That's a little bit annoying. See if I can attack it. Seems to work. One more turn. And now I won't use regeneration yet. I think I'll just try to guess where they are. I think there were 2 there. And now I'll just use a shield. Or regeneration. Maybe just regeneration. As well as exploding. I don't have that many pustules yet. I'll try to grapple that one. Now they dismembered me, or disarmed me, which is really bad because then you can't use your abilities. So then I will just do something else, such as... This one's almost dead. I still have this flamethrower. Maybe I'll just attack it. Summon maybe around this one here to kill it. Two more turns that we are disarmed. There! I cleared a room of death and all I got was this lousy achievement. Killed the 7 overpowered worms in the room of death in Vor Armory. Well, so I hope you kind of got an idea of how I would approach a situation like this. So as I said before, the problem is a little bit that I really focus on 2 attacks and the summon together with the frenzy. And I think if I did not have frenzy from the Drem, I might still have unlocked Demented, Disfigured face, potentially at the cost of some of these here, of the healing and the pustules, because I don't use them very often, in order to get a couple of more attacks, because now I was basically stuck, not really doing much for a while. So yeah, this was the Vor Armory Vault. Alright, that was my guide for the Writhing one of the new expansion. I hope you found this guide useful and see you next time.